So I'm recording, and let's just, I don't know, select A1 and then hit stop. Okay, so that macro kind of doesn't do much at all. Okay, but let's go now to view code. Let's go to modules.
How do you go to view code?
You got to go to the developer tab. If you go to the developer tab and in the controls group, you see the controls group? We want view code. You see that? Okay. Now, this is called the Project Explorer, and we don't need to go through all those details. But let's go to Module 1, and a couple things. This is a macro. It's called a subroutine. It's a bit of code named MIS macro. There's the start of it. There's the end of it. And if you notice, the stuff in green has little apostrophes, and it's green. What those are called comments, right? Like when someone codes software, they code it, but they also want to make comments so that if someone has to debug their software later, they can figure out what the hell they were doing, right? It's kind of like, you know, comments is like a sign of professional. Like you're saying, this is what this line of code does, and this is what this line of code does. So the range A1.select, that's all that's doing is saying, go to A1 and select that. That's all we have done at this point. Okay. So a couple things. We put up a message box, if you guys recall. We did conditionals. What do I mean by conditionals? All software languages have conditionals. What are conditionals? What are conditionals?
Is that like your advanced and
Yes. Okay. Conditionals allows us to do branching, right? Those are if statements. And if you think about it, you know, when you go to Sheets and you go to the MTO ordering process, well, if you hit, I don't know, Mexican, then it brings up the screen that says burritos and tortillas, right? If you hit burritos, then it brings up the, you know, that's called branching logic, right? When you do the ATM, it says put in the pin. If the pin's wrong, it does this. If it's right, it does this, right? Every programming, every software language needs conditionals. So let's do a conditional. Okay, let's do a conditional. So we're going to put up here. Well, let's put an if statement, and we'll say if range A1 dot value. Okay, so if, oops, I forgot the double quote after A1. Is greater than 10, then we're going to put out a message box that says your value is greater than 10. Else, if it's not, we'll put out a message box that says your value is not greater than 10. And end if. So as you guys type that in, what this is a conditional. So it's evaluating whatever is in A1, the value of whatever the hell is in A1, and it's saying if that value is greater than 10, then I'm going to do this line. If it's not, else, right? Else, I'm going to do this one. That's end if. Okay. So, oh, you guys there yet? No? Yes? All right. So, if I you guys still typing this in? No. If I X out this code, and let's put a 5 in A1, and let's do my macro by hitting Control M, it says your value is not greater than 10. If I put 243 in there, do Control M, it says your value is greater than 10. So conditionals simply are ways to branch, right? And if you think about it, there's all kinds of conditions in every software. You know, any software you can think about. If this matches, do this. If it doesn't match, do this. If the credit score is greater than 800, get the loan. If not, no loan. If the GPA is greater than 3.5, admit them to the program. Else, don't admit them to the program. So think about all the decisions, the logic that we can emulate using what's called conditions. Okay? Yes, sir.
That tab that says module, I can't find it on my computer.
Are you in the view code?
Yeah, I'm in the view code.
And
It has the top. It has like the sheet 1 worksheet.
uh-huh.
I don't have module 1.
Let's see. All right. So a couple other things. Okay. That is conditionals. That's one of the things that all software has. Another thing that software has, and I forgot about this, is something called variables. Okay. A variable is something that changes. If you think back to your algebra days, what did you do in algebra? You solved for x, right? X was a variable because it could be 5 in this equation, it could be 10 in this equation, it could be 20 in this equation. So every software language has variables, meaning parts of memory that you can name something that can change, where you store. You're saying, I want to store something in this variable named this. So I'm going to define a variable. Okay, I'm going to create a variable. The variable I'm going to create, I'm going to use the statement called DIM. DIM means declare a variable. I'm not sure what it stands for, but it means declare a variable. And I need to give this variable a name, okay, something that I'm going to use. Let's call it my integer. Okay, so that is the name of a place in memory that I have defined. I said, I want you to reserve this place, and I want to refer to it as my integer. I want to name this as my integer, and now it has a data type. Okay, a data type is the type of data that it will hold. There are different types of data: integer, string, decimal. So we're going to call this integer. So we are defining an integer, named my integer, and we're defining it as integer. All we've done is we've said inside of the memory of this program, take this piece of memory, call it my integer, but we haven't done anything with it. We haven't put anything in it yet. Does this make sense? Let's put something in my integer. So I'm going to say my integer equals 999. Okay. The equal sign is an assignment. So it's saying put 999 in there. So if you think about it, sometimes people like to envision it as like an arrow, right? Put 999 in there. So all we've done now is we take that block of memory and we shove 999 in it, right? So that we're storing it there, right? It's something we can use. So if I want to see this integer, let's do this. So in range, let's do A2. And we'll say the value of that is equal to my integer. So we've defined memory called my integer. We've put 999 in it. And then we've taken that 999 and we're assigning to the cell A2, the value of whatever the hell's in my integer. Okay. So let's run my code. Control M. Your value is greater than 10. Okay. And now it gets down to my code, and I put 999 in A2. I know, not real exciting, but it did it, right? Let's go back and view my code. Okay. What's kind of nice, okay, is I can say, I can create a string. Let's say my string. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's create a variable called dim my string, and you can call it anything. You can call it your name if you want, as string. Okay, a string is text, right? Think of a string as text. And now I have a block of memory called my string, and let's put something in my string. So I'm going to put in my string, I don't know, hello, my name is John Miko. So that's not stored anywhere in Excel. That's somewhere being stored in main memory, right? That's being stored in memory right now. Something I can hold on to. If I want to see it, let's do a message box of my string. So whatever the heck is in my string will be put up in a message box. If I push play, value is greater than 10, it put 999 in there, and now it puts hello, my name is John Miko, because that is what is in my string. All right. Another thing that all software programs have, the ability to find variables where we say we're storing something, calling it this, storing something in memory. Everything has conditionals, right? Conditionals, so we can do branching logic. And all software programs have loops. Okay, loops are things that we do over and over and over again, right? Because remember, computers can do things repetitively a lot faster than we can. So let's go down a little bit, and let's dim, and let's say, I don't know, my looper. Oops. Let's define a variable called my looper as an integer. Okay, so I just want another variable called my looper, and it's an integer, so it's a counting number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are different kinds of loops, but one kind of loop is a for next loop. Okay, it says I will start here and end here. So let's do a for next loop. So I'm going to say for my looper is equal 1, 2, 5. So it's going to do 5 times. It's going to start at 1 and go to 5. We end it with next my looper. So what we've started is this is the start of the loop, and this is the end of the loop. It's going to do this thing 5 times. If we want to see it, and we might as well see this, that it does it 5 times. I think this will work. Let's just put up a message box that says, that displays whatever the hell's in my looper. So that's inside my loop, and a lot of times when you program, you indent so you can see things a little bit better. Now if I play this, it's going to do all this code. Your value is greater than 10, great. 999. Hello, my name is John Miko. Great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I got to put in there 1,000,000, right? And you get 1,000,000 of those pop-ups, and it wouldn't care because it's software. It does whatever the hell you tell you to do it as many times as you like. Instead of doing that, let's put, instead of displaying it on the screen, let's change a variable. Let's change a cell using that MyLooper. So another way, you saw range, put in double quotes, the name of the cell like A2 is one way we can select a part of a worksheet. The other thing we can do is it's called cells, and we can give it a row index and a column index. So, think about Battleship. You know how you went down 5 and over 5? Okay. So let's go to, I don't know, we'll say the row index is MyLooper. The column index is 2. So we're going to be in, the first time through it's going to be in row 1, column 2. The second time through it's going to be in what? Row 2, column 2. The next time, row 3, column 3. Yes, you guys with me? And I'm going to say take that value of that cell and make it equal to MyLooper. So if I run this now, your value is greater than 10. Yep, 999 goes in there. My name is John Miko. Oops, I go back. And I see it put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. If I wanted to do the same thing, I don't know, but I wanted it to count to 100, what would I change? 2, change it to 1 to 100. And I run that, I push play, and if I go back to my spreadsheet, it did that, right? How about this? I want you guys to help me with this. What if I want to create a multiplication table like you did in, what grade was that? I don't know, 3rd grade. I want to create a multiplication table in Excel that has this kind of thing. So 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, that'd be 4, 2, 2, 3, 9, 3, 6, 3, 6. I'm talking about. How would we do that? How would we create like a multiplication table? 12 by 12 multiplication table. Any ideas? Okay, well, one thing we can do is we can nest loops. Okay, so let's do dim MyLooper as integer, and let's do, I don't know, dim MyLooper 2 as integer. That's a terrible name, but God bless you. We'll do MyLooper 2 as integer. And what did I say? 1 to 12. So this is going to go from 1 to 12, MyLooper. But I'm going to embed another loop inside a loop. So I'm going to put right after for MyLooper equals 1 to 12. I'm going to put for MyLooper 2 equals 1 to 12. And then I need to close that, so I'm going to say next MyLooper 2. Move that over. So how many times is it going to execute this code? I want you guys to think about that. How many times is it going to execute that code? someone. 12 times how many? Because it's embedded inside a loop inside a loop. Go ahead. 12 times 12 or 144, right? The first time through this loop, this is going to be a 1. It's going to do this 12 times. Then it's going to come back up here. This is going to be a 2. It's going to do that 12 times. It's going to be a 3. Then it's going to do that 12 times. It's going to be a 4. So 12 times 12 times, right? So here's what we're going to do. I know it's going to overwrite some of the stuff that I have, but I don't care. I'm going to say cells my looper. And instead of changing this to 2, we're going to make this change. And we're going to call this my looper 2. So the first time through, it's going to be 1, 1. The next time through, it's going to be 1, 2. Then 1, 3. Then 1, 4. Then 1, 5. And it's going to go 2, 1 through 12. And the value I want to stick in there is my looper times my looper 2. So it's going to multiply those two things together. I push play. Your value is greater than 10. Okay, thank you. I'm going to change John Jeebko. Okay. And I go back. And it created my multiplication table. So 12 times 12 is 144. 5 times 5 is 25. So see how quickly it can do things and how repetitive tasks over and over again, are very, very easy for it to do. One other thing I want to show you, and then we'll talk about your assignment, is we can, code is basically software that we can repeat over and over again. We talked about defining variables, and variables can be strings, they can be numbers, they can be, positions, they can be a lot of different things. We talked about conditionals, which allow us to do branching, if statements. And we just talked about loops. But software programs are also what we call conversational. Okay? What does that mean? What do you think software can be conversational? What does that mean?
Is that like going out and inputting another file?
Okay. What do you mean inputting another file?
Like you can go out and search for a document that already has the numbers in there, and then you can tell it to pull numbers or data from that file.
Yeah, it can do that. I mean, it can access other sources for sure. Access databases. We can do that with VBA. We can access flat files and other Excel files. But when I say a software is conversational, me and Marcus had a conversation. What does that look like, Marcus? How was your day, Marcus? Is that what you're giving me? How about asking me how my day was? And my day is all right. It's just starting out. Class is a little dead for some reason today, but we're making it work. And you ask me something, right? We're going back and forth, aren't we? And maybe based on what you say, I say something different. Yes? Like I don't always say that. Sometimes I hate small talk. Sometimes I just say the same damn thing. It doesn't make sense, right? But conversational means there's a back and forth, right? There's some kind of back and forth. And you think about when you're interfacing with the ATM, when you're interfacing with the MTO ordering machine, when you're interfacing with your fantasy football app, it's conversational, right? Based on what you do, it gives you a different response. You give it inputs and it gives you outputs, right? You know what I'm saying? Like you touch this and it does this. You don't touch this and it doesn't do that, right? So it's conversational. So let's do this. Okay, let's build a bad conversation, but let's show kind of a conversation. So let's go down here, and I know this is just a mishmash of code that does really a lot of different things, but nothing really well. Let's create a string. Okay, let's create a string, and let's call it dim my answer as string. Okay, and we're going to say my answer equals. But we want to go out and ask the person a question, right? We want to go out and ask the user a question. And let's make it easy. Let's make it a yes-no question. So how did we go out and put up a message? What have we been doing to put up a message? What tool have we been using to put up a message? Yeah, so I'm going to say my answer is equal to message box, and I'm going to say, let's get a good question. Yes, it has to be yes. I'm going to do a yes, no. Let's just say, are you enjoying programming? Okay, and usually the message box style that we've been using, if you don't tell it a message box style, it gives you what's called the OK only, which you guys saw all the message box we've been doing has OK. That's OK. But there's other message boxes, and one that we want to use is VB yes, no. Okay, you see VB yes, no, cancel, VB question, VB. We're going to use VB yes, no. So it's a reserved word, VB yes, no. And then we're going to put a title for our message box, and I'm going to say the big question. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to put up a message box, and it's going to say the title of the message box is going to be the big question, and it's going to say, are you enjoying programming? Yes or no. The response you give it will be put where? Where do you think the response you give it will be placed? Where will the response you give it be placed? Because you want to capture that person's response, that conversation, right? I want to capture it. When he said, my day is going okay, that was captured in my brain briefly, right? Where am I capturing that response so that I can use it? Where am I putting the response? Please help me here. Into the variable my answer, right? I'm capturing the response, putting it into my answer. I want to do something different based on what they answer, right? That's what a conversation is about. How do I do something different? How do I say, if they say yes, do this. If they say no, do this. What part of programming logic do I use? I use a conditional statement, which is very good, an if statement. So I'm going to say, if my answer is equal to VB yes, which is the yes reserved word, then we're going to put up the response. I don't know, let's just put up a message box. You should. This is great stuff. Else, if they didn't say yes, we'll say message box, that's too bad. Oops. So if I play this, okay, your value is not greater than 10. Thank you. My name is John Miko. Thank you. Are you enjoying programming? You see, the title of this box is the big question. Are you enjoying programming? If I say yes, you should. This is great stuff. I click OK. If I run it again, are you enjoying programming? I say no. It tells me something different. It says that's too bad. Okay, that's how programming languages can be conversational. And when we talk about, a lot of things that we talk about in class, like user interface, you think about this is how everything that you interact with, an application, someone had to design it to do what it does. When you touch this button, when you double tap, the bird flaps. Someone had to design that, right? They had the right software to control that. If you hit this button, it means to do this. If you hit this button to do that, does that. It's a way of creation, a way of designing, okay? Now, one thing I forgot to do this time that we did last time is if I don't want to hit Control M to run this macro, but I want a graphical way, you guys remember we could insert, if we go to the Developer tab, we could insert. There's all kind of controls, like objects, graphical objects we can insert. But the one we chose to insert was the command button. So let's insert a command button. I'm going to draw it down here. And it says, do you want to assign a macro? You want to assign code that when someone clicks on this button, you want it to do? Yeah, sure. I want it to do MIS macro. And I'm going to edit the text of this button to do it. Now I don't have to Control M. I don't have to say run code. Now I could give this to someone. I could say, when you're ready to do it, click on do it, and it will do it. Okay? So a way of communicating. Go ahead, Alex.
Can you show me how you got that button again?
Sure. If you're on the Developer tab, okay, under Controls, you see that grouping? Under, there's a little toolbox there. It says Insert. And there's a bunch of different form controls that you're used to seeing, like checkboxes and option buttons. But the one we want is this command button. And then your cursor turns into like a cross. And you can draw it anywhere you like. And then it says, hey, do you want to assign this button to a certain macro, to a certain group of code? And that's where we said assign it to MIS macro. So now I have two buttons that'll do the same damn thing. Okay? All right, so I thought about the way we could assess this. And I decided, since programming is part art, and you can use your creativity, and you can do many, many things with programming, I want you to do the following. So this is an assignment that is out there on Blackboard right now. It is at the very bottom. Oops. If I go to Assignments, at the very bottom, you will see Create an Excel Macro. Okay? It's not worth a lot of points because it shouldn't take you a lot of time. And all I want you to do is the following. Create an Excel macro. I would recommend recording one to get it started. You know how to record one, right? The macro can do anything. It can put text in a cell. It can change a cell color. It can add two numbers. It can ask a question. You can create a multiplication table. You can put up a message box. You can make a ball bounce. I don't care what you do with it, right? Whatever you want to do. I want you to take that macro you create and create a command button like we just did, Alex. Create a command button with the text do it. Assign your macro to that command button. That's it. Save your workbook with a macro, and when we save it, remember I said we have to save it a special way. We have to save it as a macro-enabled workbook. Do you guys remember that? So when I go up here to save, if I just try to save it to my desktop, it's going to yell at me. It's going to say, hey, the following features cannot be used in macro-free workbooks. VB project. I can't save it as a plain workbook. I have to save it as a file type Excel macro-enabled workbook because it's special now, right? It has something special with it. So I'm going to save it as an Excel macro-enabled workbook with my name. So whatever your name is, not my name. So John Miko, I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to attach it to my submission. Now, have you ever seen when, okay, well, let's see this. Now, so I'm going to save this. I don't know where the hell let's save it as. I'm going to save it on my desktop. And you want to place it? Yeah, so I'm going to X out of it. And if I open up John Miko, my macro, you see that security warning at the top? It says macros have been disabled, and that's by default, and you have to enable them for it to run. Why do you think Microsoft does that? Why do they do that? Why do they disable macros by default until you enable them? Why?
So someone doesn't accidentally change it.
Okay. That's very good. You're right. But why else? What can I think about what I can do in a macro? Think about what I can't do in a macro. So what can I do in a macro? I can do anything I want, right? I could put up 1 million message boxes, right? I could, start saving files to your computer all over, right? And what do we call those kind of things when people design malicious content? I could write viruses, right? I could do things. I could say, let's start scanning in that macro. I could say, let's start scanning his hard drive for documents, and I'm going to post them all over his, over the web somewhere, or I'm going to clean it all out, or I'm going to start looking for passwords, right? When you have a macro, right, you are designing things, and you can do, with a lot of, with a little bit of knowledge, you can do some very, very powerful things, right? So when you enable that macro, you're saying, I trust whatever the hell's in here isn't going to be a virus or it's going to steal my data or whatever it might be. So that's why they're disabled by default, right? I'll tell you what, a student wrote here. This is called a Trojan horse attack, a Trojan horse virus. This is a few years ago. A student wrote, it wasn't a virus, it was more of a Trojan horse. Like when I come in and I sign on to Blackboard, or I sign into Novell, I put in my user ID and my password, right? And so does every other professor. This isn't giving you ideas. But so that every other professor that uses this. So they wrote a script that basically looked exactly like your sign-on screen, but it wasn't the sign-on screen. The professor would put in their user ID and password. It would send that off to the person via email, and then it would bring up the actual sign-on screen. The person's like, well, why do I have to sign on twice? But they did, right? You don't think of anything of it like a quirk. And they had that running in a couple of classrooms for weeks, and had several faculty passwords, which you could change grades on Blackboard and and all those good things. So that's why they're disabled by default. Okay, so we have like 5 or 6 minutes left. You guys can work on that assignment. Should be easy to do, or you can leave. Have a great day. Let's do Monday. Do Monday. It shouldn't take you that long. Monday.